And it's time for your Wednesday Wellness Wake Up with Dr. Sharon, brought to you by the Napa County Chiropractic Association. Good morning, Dr. Sharon.
Good morning, Kelly. It's a beautiful day to be alive in Napa Valley.
Absolutely. So who do you have for us today? We have a guest on the phone, yes?
Yes, thank you. We have a fabulous woman, Toni Bernhard, on the phone. She's the author of an award-winning book that I've just been so incredibly touched by, and I really appreciate her coming on so early this morning. The book is called How to Be Sick, and it's a Buddhist-inspired guide for the chronically ill and their caregivers. And, you know, that sounds like a very heavy topic, but Toni really brings a very joyful perspective, and I really wanted to share that with. Let me just introduce Toni, and then I'll let her to do some of the talking today. Until she retired from, really due to illness, Toni was a law professor for 22 years at the University of California, Davis, and she served for over 6 years as the dean of students. So she had a very active life. Oh. She had a long-standing Buddhist practice and co-led a weekly meditation group with her husband, and I really am delighted for you to be here today. Good morning, Toni.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write the book, How to Be Sick, and what was the driving force? I know it was a big undertaking.
Well, in 2001, I unexpectedly fell ill on a trip that my husband and I were on, and we just assumed it was an acute viral infection, as did the doctors. But I didn't recover from it, and it's now been 10 years, and I am in a constant flu-like state. So I, back in 2001 when this happened, I, along with everybody else I knew, including the doctors, kept waiting for me to get well. And I even tried going back to work part-time, which was just really a disaster because I was too sick to be in the classroom. And I finally stopped working. And for several years, I felt like a failed Buddhist. I'd had this long-standing Buddhist practice, but I was angry, I was in denial, I was afraid, and I would go to sleep at night and just try to bully my body into waking up well again. And I reached a point after about 4 or 5 years where I realized I had to take a different approach to what had happened in my life. And that I had to start where I was, with a body that was sick. I'm still working to get better. I try new treatments, so this is not in any way resignation or indifference, but I decided I had to start where I was. And I actually opened my laptop one day. The title of the book came first. I wrote down, How to Be Sick. And I thought, nice idea, but I'm too sick to write it. But I actually did write it from my bed using my laptop. And what I did was to bring to bear many of the Buddhist practices and practices that I devised on my own to this new life of mine, to try to turn it around, and it indeed worked, so that I could find joy and really a new life with the body I have in the condition it's in.
Wow, thank you. I'm just wondering, for someone who's listening today who may have a chronic illness, who is also sick or suffering, or a companion or a caregiver for someone, what advice, give us really some specific examples. What advice would you give them? What are some of the things in the book that you share that helps people live a more joyful life, in a state of chronic illness?
Well, I think, to me, there are two points that stand out, partly based on the feedback I've had from the book. And one is this recognition that everybody's life has its share of joy and its share of difficulties. And we're in bodies. And bodies sometimes do really well and go right along until our 80s or 90s, but sometimes they get sick. Sometimes they get injured. And so just accepting that this is something that can happen. It may have happened to you. It could happen to anybody. It's just part of being alive, which is really one way of stating the first noble truth. Not that life is suffering, but that life includes difficulties. And from there, then the other thing that really goes along with that is that we should not be blaming ourselves for those difficulties because they're just part of being alive. And instead, we need to develop compassion for whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. I mean, even people who are healthy have difficulties. It could be difficulties on the job or in a relationship. And so the book focuses on a lot of compassion practices, mostly learning how to direct and cultivate compassion for ourselves. We seem to be very good at being compassionate toward others, but it's difficult. We tend to be so judgmental. That inner critic is so strong that there are a lot of practices in the book to help us learn to be kind to ourselves and not blame ourselves for our difficulties. And when you get to that point of no blame, that's what opens the world to you, to be able to look around and see what else you might do with your life.
Toni, something that I experienced many years ago, I had an illness that kept me down for many months. And what was challenging for me, and I think for a lot of people, is to allow others to help. Whether that's, bringing you meals or helping with housework or coming to visit, you feel almost like you self-isolate, or that's something that I kind of did. Is that something that's somewhat common in our culture?
It's very common because we're taught that to ask for help is a sign of weakness.
Oh, yeah.
And for the first few years, I'm very lucky that I have a loving husband who turned out to be a wonderful caregiver. But many people aren't in that situation. They have to rely on friends and family who may not be in the house. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned is that people want to help, but you have to ask. And if you just are very general, they'll say things to you like, give me a call if you need some help.
Right, yes.
But it's really up to you to call, to get in contact, and give them a specific thing to do. Can you go to the pharmacy and pick up this medication? I'm too sick to do it. And they'll do it. People want to help, but they have to be asked, and it really helps to give them a specific task. When you are chronically ill, or even a long-term acute illness, the isolation can be devastating. And I think it's the longest chapter in the book, how to deal with that isolation and how to build a life around the fact that you may be alone a lot of the time, and what to do about friends who drift away. There are people who are uncomfortable around illness. Yeah. And I took it very personally at first when some friends didn't stick around. But now I've come to see that it wasn't about me. That people have, some people are uncomfortable around illness, and then sometimes people develop problems of their own and can't always be there for you. And that was a huge point for me, reaching that point of forgiving people who I thought had let me down. It was so freeing.
Wow. Toni, I had a question for you about people that don't meditate, people that don't have much knowledge about Buddhist philosophy of practice. Would this book be useful for them? Would they be able to understand the things that you're writing about?
Well, yes. And I'm saying that because that's what people tell me. And when I say tell me, they write to me, but I also read those Amazon reviews.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that most of the people who have been helped by the book aren't Buddhist.
Oh,
And they've told me that it served as a great introduction to Buddhist teachings, but that the teachings are really universal.
That's wonderful.
You know, compassion is not, Buddhism doesn't have the market on compassion. These are practices that are common to other spiritual traditions and humanistic traditions. So the book is written the only way I could write it because of my own illness. The chapters are short and there are headings, and I'm told that it's not, that you don't have to be Buddhist to understand the book. And it's not all Buddhist. I also draw on the teachings of a woman named Byron Katie, who has some techniques for helping us question the stressful thoughts we spin about our lives and then believe and make ourselves miserable, like, I'll never be happy again. Nobody cares that I'm sick. You know, we all spin these stories. You don't have to be sick to spin stories that aren't necessarily true.
Hey, Toni, before we have to go, I would love for you just to, tell the audience some of the joyful activities that you do right from your, bed, right from your couch. I know I see you're a very active, fun Facebook friend of mine, so I know you're having a lot of fun posting gorgeous pictures on Facebook. But give us a couple other examples.
I have a Facebook page for the book, and I started to post animal pictures, and now that's what people want me to do. Well, what I've done from the bed is I do some crafts. I do crochet and silk ribbon embroidery, and I also found this wonderful company, the Teaching Company, that puts out DVDs where you can learn about different composers and history professors giving lectures and that kind of thing. You can get these from your library.
I hear you become a big opera fan, too.
I have, through the Teaching Company DVDs, and a friend of a friend who happens to be a professional opera critic has coached me via email.
Wow.
If you're going to be sick, it's good to be sick in the Internet age.
That's for sure. Toni, thank you so much for being with us today. If you want to find out more about Toni's book, How to Be Sick, you can find it online at howtobesick.com. Toni, take care. It was wonderful having you here today. And
thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Sharon, for this Wednesday Wellness Wake Up. And it's brought to you by the Napa County Chiropractic Association. And members of the Napa County Chiropractic Association are at the Chef's Market every week to answer all your questions. So be sure to stop by, and you can check them out at napachiro.com. And I will get Toni's website. How about that? And we'll put that up on the blog this morning. People will put the title of the book, How to Be Sick, and that way people can get more information. Thank you so much. All right, coming up next, we have your news, weather, and traffic at 1440 KVON, 99.3 The Vine.